So hello, I think is the first thing to say. My name is Rosie. I am the Media and Campaigns Officer at the EAUC, and I am going to be your host today. So that's very much like a steward then. Welcome to today's SDG webinar on mapping and reporting. Thank you for registering, and thanks also to our speakers who will be introduced momentarily by our chair, who is Ian, the EAUC CEO. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the EAUC website and the Sustainability Exchange under the SDG section later on, probably beginning of next week. Just a little bit of housekeeping to go over for now. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. Perhaps that's been a long bit of discussion there without much point. I'm hoping you all can. So for the time being, I've placed all of your microphones on mute to keep background noise to a minimum. If you're having issues with your audio, just send me a message in the chat box and I'll try to help you. There will be a number of opportunities to ask questions throughout this webinar, simply because there is so many of you. Oh, I'm going to pop that person on mute. So yeah, simply because there's so many of you, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, please, there's a lot of you, so please send me a message in the chat box if you want to ask a very specific question, or during the Q&As there is a functionality on some of your computers to raise your hands, just so we know that you want to say something. Yeah, and obviously unmute your microphone if you would like to do that. So that leads me on to the chat boxes. Using Zoom does have that functionality. So to use the chat box, it should be at the bottom of your screen, just where it says chat. If you click it, a pop-up box will then appear, and you can send either direct messages to anybody on the webinar, or you can send them to everyone. Please do turn your webcams on if possible, if you've got them. We just like for the webinar to be as interactive as possible. Obviously, if you don't have one or would rather not, that's fine as well. Final point, when you logged in, it will have asked you to input your name, as that is what appears in the list of participants over to the right. If you didn't put your name, it will automatically give you a number instead, which is a little bit confusing if we want to call on you to ask a question if you've asked to do so. So if you haven't put your name in when you first signed in, if you could just, I think there's an option up to the top right, you can go in there and rename yourself. So that's all from me now. I'm going to pass you over to the EAUC CEO, Ian Patton.
Thanks, Rosie. Ian Patton here, EAUC CEO. Great to see so many of you. The Accord is definitely live and kicking, and this is a critical stage for us. How do we ensure that the great practice going on in the sector, but also the challenges we face in implementing the SDGs, and goodness knows we need to be in the middle of them with our research and teaching and campuses, how do we ensure that gets the profile it needs globally so that we get more support to do what we do? That's what this is all about. This is all about reporting and accounting for our performance, but also more so actually in a way that helps us share the learning. And that's core about the SDG Accord. The EAUC, alongside organisations in France and Australia, led the formation of the Accord. We said we in our colleges, universities need to be at the heart of finding new solutions to deliver these amazing 17 goals. But actually we need to be doing it in a way which we can share the learning. So the Accord is all about inspiration, inspiring us and our leaders and our students and our colleagues to actually think, how can we solve these problems, but how can we get more credit for the great stuff we're already doing, but how can we do more? And that's where this webinar comes in. How can we account for what we're doing globally, nationally and globally, and how can we get the profile that we need to show the value of learning in delivering the SDGs. So this webinar has got 3 core contributors. Thank you to them all. So we've got Joe Kemp from the NUS. Joel will be talking to us about linking the SDGs with green impact and perhaps other programs are already doing, and that's really critical. Instead of having something else to do, we need to find clever ways of connecting what we're already doing, but seeing it through the SDG lens. We're delighted also to have Neil Smith. Neil is the Sustainability Manager at the University of Bournemouth, and Neil will be talking to us about how they are mapping and accounting reporting for the SDGs in that university. And it's very early days, so we're really delighted Joe and Neil are prepared to put their head above the parapet. We were to have Ola Goranson. Ola is actually our route in to the UN in New York at the High-Level Political Forum, which we'll hear about. But Ola, I'm afraid, this morning reported in ill. So I'm delighted that Jean-Christophe Carteron, who's the director of CSR at Kedge Business School, Marseille, France, and who's actually leading with the UN, the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, is stepped into the breach. JC, really grateful to you. And JC will be giving us more insight into what the high-level political forum at which the Accord will be reported looks like, what it does, and how we need to ensure our voice is heard. So, Joe, if I could delightfully hand over to you. Joe, I appreciate you're having to dash off after your session. I'm going to be taking questions immediately after. So we've got about 15 minutes for your session. Over to you, Joe.
Have I managed to share my screen? Yep, lovely. Okay, thanks, Ian. So just going to give you a bit of a short introduction to Green Impact. I expect a lot of people on the call are aware of it, and just talk you through briefly what we've been working with some of our institutions on in terms of integrating the SDGs into their programs. So really briefly, Green Impact is a simple and flexible process, essentially for breaking down the complex idea of sustainability into manageable chunks for individuals and teams to tackle within institutions and increasingly off-campus organisations as well. So it's about giving a structured framework to help people get stuff done. As I say, it's part of a national framework. We've got thousands of individuals at the moment taking part in actions across the UK and internationally. And at the end of their year, however their year runs, we tend to award them with bronze, silver, gold type awards to kind of accredit their improvement over the course of the year. And critically, also integrating students into this process. So it's not just about staff, it's about students working alongside staff teams and auditing them at the end of the project as well. So I guess it's actually a lot of our institutions that have been helping us start to look at how we integrate the SDGs into Green Impact. For most universities and colleges, they write their own list of actions, so it's bespoke to every organisation. So that provides a massive opportunity, but it also means that it hasn't happened across the board yet because people are designing their own programmes to fit with how they want to promote the SDGs and other aspects of sustainability in their organisations. I guess the opportunities that it gives us, we have the opportunity by listing out simple actions and linking them to the Sustainable Development Goals that we can kind of raising awareness of that as a roadmap. So helping people feel optimistic about the bigger impact of those individual actions that they might be taking in their department. We're hoping it may also be a really useful recruitment tool to engage new teams of staff and students and making Green Impact more relevant. If the SDGs are being used to promote sustainability more broadly across a campus, then having them integrated within Green Impact can help with that. It also provides that common ground between diverse participants. So a lot of organisations, we have teams working on sustainable laboratories, working on catering, in academic departments, in colleges, in collegiate universities. And it gives us an opportunity to make a common link between all of the actions that they're taking. And obviously they're globally recognised goals. So that gives us a massive opportunity to communicate beyond the organisation in the process of catching and reporting what individuals and teams have been doing by demonstrating how those individual actions can help add up to participation in the SDGs. And every year when we rewrite the toolkit with an organisation to keep it fresh, obviously this end of this academic year is going to be our prime time to start working these in to how a new toolkit looks for an organisation. So it gives us a really nice opportunity to do something a bit more fresh and new for a lot of organisations that have been taking part for a good few years. So organisations do this in different ways, and I'll give you a couple of specific examples in a minute. They're used to frame the broader sustainability issue that an individual action might be tackling. We're able to add specific images or resources to complement existing green impact resources to make the project feel much more wide-reaching and provide more support. In all of our programmes, we work with the staff and students taking part in green impact through running workshops or webinars or drop-in sessions, and having the SDGs, particularly as they're relatively new to a lot of people outside of sustainability circles, gives us a great opportunity to kind of introduce sustainability in a really holistic way and get people in through the door. We're hoping it's going to help student volunteers see broader connections between sustainability and their courses as well. A lot of organisations take these lists of actions into bigger projects that individual teams can do after they've been taking part for a few years. And we're also hoping that they can be framed in the broader SDG framework, so that it gives, again, people something bigger to hold on to and the project to feel more impactful. Obviously, it can also link into other organisation-wide activities, as we've already sort of looked at, and could go some way to creating specific individual toolkit actions that everybody taking part in green impact in your organisation could be taking. So here's an example from King's College London, and you can see here that one of their silver actions, one of their first actions, is around identifying which of the UN SDGs are relevant to their department's activities. So a really broad brush approach to getting a team who are sort of partway down their sustainability journey to start mapping out what they think their impact is. So that's what it looks like for King's in terms of the ways that they're tackling it. To put that into a bigger text that you can actually read it, it's hoping to reach a wide variety of teams, whether they be doing teaching or research or their support services or they're doing engagement activities. So this is one way that King's have kind of given a broad use of the SDGs to frame a specific action. And this is some of the additional information that they've been giving teams, making it feel like a university priority, which is obviously something that the SDGs give us the opportunity to do. Similarly, hopefully not to preempt what Neil's going to talk about, Bournemouth have also been a sort of trailblazing in this and have been trying to integrate their the SDGs into a lot of their toolkit. So they've got actions in bronze, which is about publicising and promoting information on the SDGs. In silver, so sort of the next layer up, teams that have been doing a bit more, getting them to organise an awareness event or done a presentation. So it's about reaffirming their knowledge with the broader group of people that they work with. And at the higher level, asking them to integrate the SDGs into professional practice, teaching or research. So a much bigger ask, but again, leaving it up to individuals to kind of
Oh, looks like we're having a brief freezing moment.
Sorry, folks, seem to have a technical challenge there. We're going to fast track and then come back to Joe, hopefully, because that's very interesting. We could, JC, if you're able, if you could just unmute yourself, or Rosie, she'll do that. Are you okay, JC, if we launch in with you?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. So, sorry, folks, about that. We'll come back. Rosie will keep an eye on Joe Kemp. JC has stepped in for Ola Granson, who works for United Nations Department of Economic Social Affairs, who is the route into the sector having a voice in the annual intergovernmental meetings where they review progress on the SDGs, and we're going to a space on that. Joe, is that you back? Do you know what the problem was?
I don't, I'm afraid. I just disappeared.
Okay, so Joe, we'll cut back to you because I know you're rushing. But Joe, if it goes again, what I'll do is I'll kick in with a question to JC, and then if you come back, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, no
back
problem.
To you, Joe.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. So I think I was just saying that within individual actions, we can tailor each one to kind of fit with a specific SDG. So these are examples from Cambridge in terms of health and well-being actions that they're asking people to take. And obviously you could map each one of those and reference the Sustainable Development Goal number 3 against that, which would then mean at the back end, being a person running Green Impact, you'd be able to see a map of how many different teams across the organisation were taking that particular action, and therefore feed into your reporting on the number of people involved in good health and well-being within your organisation. So I guess some of the challenges that some of our institutions are facing at the minute, and why this isn't sort of broadly taken up at the moment, partly is us not understanding the breadth of ways that we could do it. And that is very much about us working with our institutions to discuss with them the best ways to integrate them at their local level. Obviously, we've got the challenges around the SDGs in general, in that outside of our circle, maybe, they're less well known, and we're facing a challenge there. So we may come across the issue of integrating them within existing programs, of kind of muddying the language and the water of sustainability, but that's not unovercomable. 17 goals might be difficult for individuals to and teams to kind of tackle in their minds. The important part of Green Impact is that it's breaking things down, and actually I think they fit really nicely within the sort of themes that people are working on in Green Impact, but presented as a whole, it could be a challenge. Many Green Impact actions will touch on some, but maybe not all SDGs. So I guess in terms of a mapping process, there's an opportunity there to see whether actions that don't fall into the SDGs, how important they should be within Green Impact, and seeing maybe how they could be addressed better. And again, maybe this is just a broader SDG challenge. Is it too ambitious to try and look at the bigger, massive picture when we're trying to do on-the-ground behaviour change and engagement work in an institution? It's a question. But I think the opportunities, obviously there's always opportunities out of challenges, so we could probably answer a lot of those challenges with opportunities. I say we're just at the beginning of the process, but hopefully we can start to monitor how many teams and therefore individuals are undertaking or starting to tackle each of the SDGs. We can also see how many people might be reached by that. So with every team taking part, we can kind of try and see how many individuals are within their whole department that their messaging is reaching. We can also collect evidence of what they've been doing. So through the process of Green Impact, people upload documents, pictures, policies, things that they've been working on to evidence their activity. So it's not just a case of people pledging to do something. We've got evidence that we could also pull off if we approach that in a systematic way. Students also audit the process. So similarly, we've got an opportunity to verify that activity and get a feel for how deep that action is going. And we gather feedback from participants at the end of the year as well. So this also provides us with a kind of nice pocket of people taking action on campus that we can kind of find out how well they understand the SDGs as a result of taking part in Green Impact, or what other areas they think that it impacts. I think that's the majority for me in terms of reporting. We're doing an SDG teach-in later in the month. So I've got some information on that, but we could always send that out afterwards. And that's a way to encourage academics to integrate themes from the SDGs within their teaching on one specific week, so that we can measure the impact of that.
That's excellent, Joe. Sorry about the technical challenges. Joe, what we'll do is we'll make sure that what you've got on the teaching side that you've just touched on, make sure that's got out to this group. I know you're having to go now, but if anyone does have any questions for NUS or Joe in this space, do please put them into the chat box, and we'll make sure those get circulated, and any responses we'll make sure the whole group has. Joe, quickie from me, what you know, in the end of the day, how important to the NUS are the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, pretty fundamentally important. I guess probably to a lot of us working in the sector, they're not new in terms of their concepts that we've been trying to work towards. I just think it provides us with a fantastic visual, as well as really nicely broken down opportunity to pick and choose how we discuss sustainability, but within this global format. We have pressure from students wanting to understand their impact in the world, and being interested in what their institution is doing to improve their sustainability. So it's just a nice theme for us to hook everything on, really. So green impact is one of the opportunities for doing that.
And will you be mapping, for example, responsible futures against the SDGs?
Yeah, I not genned up on where we are in that process, but yeah, definitely. Okay. We're nearing the end of this academic year. It will be the time when we're starting to sort of pull all of that together. But yeah, Responsible Futures, our ESD program, will fit perfectly into the SDG.
Great. That's excellent, Joe. Thank you very much. I think it's a big issue for us all. Do we start creating new tools, new models, new systems, new reporting, or do we actually review what we currently have and what we do, and find new ways of accounting and challenging, you know, what we do, and accounting for what we do, as opposed to just adding more workload to us? That's a key issue for this. Let me bring in JC. Joe, thanks very much. JC, so thank you for your time. Jean-Christophe, tell us, what, in short, what is this UN high-level political forum? What's it about, and why should universities and colleges have a voice at it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's quite important to understand that for the first time, we all have the same roadmap. So the fact that most of the time in the UN system, they are doing their stuff in their way, and then locally we are doing our own stuff, actually change a little bit, because all the states sign and accept the SDG. And then now we have the same roadmap with corporation, UN, state, NGOs, and academics. So I think it's quite important to understand that it's not only to follow something which is owned by the UN, but we have the same roadmap. So in order to understand that, we have to know that probably you know that, but the global agenda is from 2015 or 16 to 2030. So we have something like 15 years now, less than 15 years to manage to reach this goal. And actually, in order to do that, the UN have launched different moments in the year where actually many stakeholders work together. So every year we have something called the HighLevel Political Forum in July. So it's 2 weeks. It's a 2 weeks event at the UN in New York, where actually we have all the member states, some stakeholders, including corporation, UN, NGOs, what they call major stakeholders, and of course higher education should play a role here. And the HLPF is actually 2 weeks. We have 1 week where actually states are discussing on what they have done during the last year. And every year, the HLPF focus on some specific SDGs. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, they have a meeting just for ministers. So it's quite important to have that in mind, that it's really a global agenda. And every year we have this moment in New York we just give a feedback out on where we are. We report a lot, and actually we probably, and sometime we try to figure out what we're going to try to push for the next General Assembly for the UN in September.
So JC, thank you. How will signatories to the SDG Accord, because obviously when you have a vice chancellor or a principal or the president of student union signing it on behalf of the organization, they are making a commitment to some sort of reporting. How will that appear or be presented at the high-level political forum? In what shape and what type of event?
Okay, so last year, I explained where we were last year in order to see where we're going to go next year. So last year, what we had, we had what we call a special event during the HLPF, organized by HESI. I don't know if you're all aware about HESI. So HESI was launched in Rio. So it's an initiative with different UN bodies, including UNDESA, UNESCO, UNEP, Prime, Global Compact, and UNU, and others. And actually, in Rio, we managed to bring different international networks. It's where we start to work with AUEC. And we ask deans and chancellors to commit themselves to do something to accept their responsibility and to put sustainable development in the campus, in research, pedagogy, etc., etc. So HESI is actually kind of vehicle for different UN agencies to bring education into the whole HLPF process. So last year we had a special event where actually we presented some stuff like the Sulitest. And then next year, we're gonna have this special event we don't exactly know the date, but during those 2 weeks, we're gonna have a special event at the UN. And then because we realize how important higher education is, actually UNDESA have organized a full day, which is gonna be on the 11th, which is a side event, but to give more places to discuss and actually, I think, to try to move forward from the accord and how we're going to report and probably try to write the roadmap for the next years. So I think 2 moments for the next high-level political forum, a full day, which is a side event where we're actually for ourselves, for all academics, and one part where we're going to probably present the report during the HESI event during, I think, the second week.
So JC, if we're some of the people in this webinar will be saying, well, look, I'm in a medium-sized university, big intergovernmental events in New York. They feel very far away from me. How would you explain the relevance or the value of universities and colleges having a stronger voice in the SDG system?
The thing is, as Joe just mentioned, we have to highlight best practices, and we have to, I think she said, collecting evidence. And of course, some big university can have really good practices and they have to share that, and that's cool. There are lots of initiatives. Even in France, we have some engineering school with some couple hundred of students, and they are doing really great things. So the idea of this report is really to bring all those, but first to have a global overview. I think it's quite important also to have this, the snapshot of where we are in higher education, and also to highlight good practices. And again, I think we have to work a little bit on that, but we have those 2 moments. We have the report itself, and probably we can do something in the workshop that we're going to organize with the Global Alliance during the July event. But I don't know, I'm sorry, because my son was cut, so I don't know if you explain how it's going to work for the event in July.
Good point. Rosie will be talking about the reporting that is currently being planned. And I think it's a really key area for us because we're already reporting to death, aren't we? I can see nodding. So, you know, this is, and also we're all at very different places on this journey, and the reporting isn't out to name and shame us, but it is out to focus our minds to ensure that if our Vice Chancellor, for example, or Principal has signed, that there is a driving force to actually ensure that we do account to some degree for what we're doing. I mean, my starting point in the reporting, and Rosie will talk about this more, is that the reporting that we're currently doing, that's where we start here. Yeah. That's where we start. Because when you actually do map the SDGs across your university or your college, you're suddenly going to find gaps. There's tons of stuff you're doing really, really, really well. But the power of the SDGs is that it takes a cross transdisciplinary, trans-subject agenda, and you suddenly realize there are little gaps in what you're particularly doing there, and it helps us to focus on those. But the starting point for us all this year is the reporting we're doing is what we're using, not extra reporting. And that should hopefully help us to start feeling comfortable and confident. But Rosie will talk more about that later. JC, so you've got experience of this, and I know last year you mentioned briefly the Sulitest, which many of us know. So what was the impact of the Sulitest report at last year's HighLevel Political Forum, so that we can learn about how we can ensure we have a strong report with case studies from the UK and elsewhere?
First of all, the fact that for a long time, education was mainly seen in the UN system and against just for primary school. So since Rio, we managed to put higher education in the picture. Okay, so the fact that we start to report with data was quite well received by all the stakeholders in place, because it's not only one evidence, but really, as I said, a snapshot of. So the Sulitest really just measure the global awareness on different on the SDG and on different SDGs. But with that, actually, we managed to prove that we are doing things, and we are also, to be able to report is a proof that you are doing something. You know, actually, it's a good start if you want to move forward. And what was really, really good, it's after the side event, the special event that we had, we received lots of, we had lots of discussion with some of the UN bodies. I just give the example of UNDP. We never work with them. And with UNDP now, we are creating a specific modules for Sulitest on poverty, for instance. So actually, thanks, by showing what we were doing, actually, and proving that we are quite professional of what we try to do, we receive call from other stakeholders, including UN bodies, to move forward and to be more, to innovate also, of course.
Great. JC, thank you. If anyone has any comments or questions on JC or comments generally about the HighLevel Political Forum, do please throw those into the chat box or signal to Rosie you'd like to raise them. While that's happening, I'd like to thank JC, and if we just move on to Neil now at Bournemouth. Neil, thank you for this. Any of you that follow the SDG Accord signatories will have been very impressed with the takeover bid that Bournemouth made on it. So it's very impressive, Neil. You're doing something really well. Neil, tell us about your own accounting reporting that's in development at Bournemouth.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Rosie, if you'd like to put up the presentation, is that okay? Can you do that for us? That's great. Thanks, Rosie. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to come and have a chat about what we're doing at Bournemouth. Still early days, as I'm sure we're all finding that's the case. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into the way we've gone about raising awareness about the goals, mapping them, reporting them, and basically trying to hang everything off them, because we see them really as the right way to go forward in terms of selling the sustainability message without actually using the S word, which is really, I think, has been one of those things that's always causes a bit of grief. We'll not get bogged down in that now, but it's certainly, I think it's a great help to us. So next slide, if you may, Rosie. So we're all familiar with these, but we tripped over these really back about a year and a half ago when we started work on developing the next Bournemouth University strategy. Now, we had environment in the strategy already. So this was due to finish this summer. And so we started work on mapping out what would BU 2025, as it's become known, as the next strategy look like. So the timing was really good from that point of view to get familiarised ourselves with what the goals were. And if you have the next slide, please, Rosie. What was really good timing was that the AUC conference came along. And that really gave us a push because it showed us all the things that other people were doing and really gave us a bit of a loads of ideas about how we could use them. So the main way we've used them so far to raise awareness is to build them into the strategy. And we have something at Bournemouth called the fusion model. It's not, I wouldn't say particularly specific to Bournemouth. It's the fusion of educational practice, research and professional practice. So what we did was we mapped those three areas against each of the goals. So we went mining in our own website to find examples of those three things already happening at Bournemouth. And then we pushed that into the development of the strategy. So we really wanted, by doing that, we demonstrated really that a lot of this is actually already happening across the institution. And we just wanted to get people into the swing of thinking about the goals. And what we've just been asked to do is produce key performance indicators for the strategy. And again, what we've done is we've just mapped those against the goals. It's not a huge amount different to what we're already doing. It's because, I mean, a lot of those things we've been doing for years, energy, water, waste, all those things, and they all map really easily against the goals. So it's not that difficult. And back to a point that was made there from Ian was that we're not changing, we're not coming up with a new reporting system. We're just embellishing what we've already got. So that leads us nicely on to the next thing. So EcoCampus, ISO 14001, one of the big areas of changes for the new standard was the leadership and commitment clause. So when we were audited last December against the new standard, one of the things that we highlighted to the auditor was about how we were using the goals in developing the strategy. And that was all picked up and was used as evidence that we were meeting that clause. And we've also been putting a statement in all our policies, and there are a lot of them, on how this policy now helps us to meet the UN SDGs. So we're basically just building them into there so people get familiar with them. So on the awareness side, we've produced an induction booklet for all new starters. You can see it on our website. So this goes out to all our new starters, staff side. And again, it's all been branded in terms of the SDGs. We've got pull-up banner screens we've produced and the website's all been augmented so that, again, that familiarisation. We've just published our annual sustainability report. Again, we've just used the goals to frame that report. So against each of the goals that are relevant to the work we've done as a team in the last year, we've put down what we've done. Green impact, Joe has already talked about. Green rewards, some of you may have heard about. In fact, there was an article this week in the EAUC newsletter that came around. So we've signed up for another 6 months. It's something called we ran last year called Jump. It's a way to reward staff for taking positive actions. And one of the things we've done there is to link each of the areas to the SDGs. So if you're doing activities such as taking the stairs over the lift, or if you're recycling, we've just linked that. Now, one of the good things about that is that as the staff report on that, we'll actually be able to log progress against each of the SDGs. And at the end of the 6 months, we'll be able to give a report at the end of that against each of the SDGs, how much activity has actually taken place. We've done presentations to raise awareness and workshops with our staff and students, getting them to think more about what they can do themselves that are linked to the goals, because another comment that's been made about they are global goals, but actually there's a lot of things on our own doorstep where they are relevant. I mean, for example, on our own doorstep in Bournemouth, we do have, a lot of people sleeping rough. So that is a very relevant thing to where we operate. So it's not like these are kind of out of sight in terms of being for the global picture, if you like, very much on our doorstep. So that's just some of the stuff that we've been up to. So Rosie, next slide. So what's coming next? So tomorrow our strategy hopefully gets signed off by our board, and I already alluded to the SDG Accord, and I have to say one of the reasons why there was suddenly such an influx is because we linked signing up to the SDG to reward points. So strangely enough, when we launched Green Rewards, within 2 days, you'll see that massive long list of names on the Accord, and that's the reason why. So it's really helped us to engage with our staff around that, which we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. Hopefully also complete work on the KPIs. We've got a regional AWD meeting a week tomorrow, and I'll be presenting at that. So I'll be talking to the regional directors about the mapping work we've been doing with the SDGs. Got Service Excellence Conference coming up. We've been asked to run a workshop around the SDGs, and in fact, the whole of it, one of the main themes of the conference this year is going to be around sustainability. So we have a real opportunity there to engage with more staff. We've already talked about Green Impact, Green Rewards. We have put in, this is a bit of a plug, a couple of workshops for this year's EAUC conference, talk some more about Green Rewards and also about the ISO 14001 and the link to the UN SDGs. So hopefully we'll get a chance to share a bit more of what we've been up to then. We're planning to redesign our website, make it much more to align, if you like, or map the goals against the various areas of activity. And fingers crossed, I've just been involved in writing a paper with Chris Shield here, aligning campus strategy with the SDGs. So that's just gone in for a conference. So hopefully that will get published in due course. And I'm sure there'll be other opportunities. Actually, interesting, one of the things I missed off was the teaching, which is coming up. And again, we've been talking to our academic colleagues about getting them to recognize that actually a lot of, I think that the main thing, sorry, just backtracking, is that I lay down a bit of a gauntlet when we run these workshops, and we say to people, there must be one of those goals that you can link to in your life, professional or personal. I find it hard to believe that you cannot find something. And that's one of the beauty of the goals. So, one of the areas that we find difficult often to have traction is with our health and social sciences colleagues. But you've got goal 3 there, which is writ large in all the kind of programs they run. So again, real opportunities there to engage much more fully with the whole of the university community. I think that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Neil. So Neil, you're finding the global goals, as they're sometimes referred to, as a useful opportunity to find new ways of communicating with maybe a wider audience. And at the start, you talked about trying to avoid the sustainability word.
Absolutely. They've been a real boon to us. We've got 624 staff, about 34% of the university have signed up to Green Rewards. And they'll be, on that last slide, you can sort of see that's what Green Rewards looks like. So you can see already the tie-up directly between the SDG and the activities those 600 odd staff hopefully will be reporting against. But they've, they have really given us a way in to have a conversation with the academic colleagues. We started last year, in fact, when we were invited to the faculty education and student experience committees, which we have here. And there was an opportunity again to share with academic colleagues. So I think it's really helped us sort of bridge that gap to the academics, particularly those hard to reach ones that, as I said, health and social sciences, if you asked the academics there, do they educate our students on sustainability? They'd probably say no. If you say to them, though, actually, what you're educating around health and well-being, they say, of course, that's what we do all the time. So, I think that's really where we've got the greatest in.
That's really positive, Neil. Please keep your questions coming in for JC or for Neil. Neil, that's really encouraging to hear your story, and we look forward to hearing as Bournemouth progresses. But I'm actually going to bring in Rosie now, if she's able, just to tell us a little bit about what reporting might look like, how reporting is being developed, bearing in mind that you were starting off with what you've got, not reinventing the wheel. But just to give a sense of how it's evolving, and I think there is a space for more people to input into that. Rosie.
Microphone. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so like you were saying, I think we're just talking a little bit about how that's evolving and what precisely, I think, what mapping reporting means for the SDG Accord. So I just wanted to start off by saying, first of all, for those of you that have signed the SDG Accord, thank you, whether it's on an individual level, which we really appreciate, or an institutional level, which is really impressive. First of all, thank you. The SDGs, as we all know, are all-encompassing and should bring about transformative change, but it is up to us, all of us, to ensure their success. So the SDG Accord shows institutions' commitment to the sustainable development, both within their institution and globally. And to have some kind of tangible report to be able to show what we're doing on this, we've asked signatories to report on the SDGs within their institution. Now, we've been a little bit vague about this on purpose because we don't want those words to strike terror into the heart of people that are already doing a lot of reporting, as Ian mentioned earlier. So we've said that we're going to collate responses and reports from signatories and present them to the UN High-Level Political Forum in July, which obviously JC's talked about a little bit. But we're really keen to stress that what we mean by reporting is not going to be onerous or prescriptive. So we recognise many of you will not be at a stage where you're able to formally report, although some of you will, and that's also great, obviously. We've pulled together to sort of work out how to go about this. We've pulled together a small task and finish group to discuss reporting. It's got a couple of endorsing partners. It's got a lot of, well, not a lot, a few members, just to make sure everything's representative and we're getting the feedback that we need to create something that's really viable for everyone. At this stage, we can't present it to you precisely, but we can tell you where our thoughts are going with this, and it should be ready pretty soon. We've decided on a sort of two-pronged approach to reporting, reflective of the fact that people are at different stages in their journey. We're going to ask, we think at this stage, institutions to fill in a really brief survey. I know, survey, but honestly, it's going to be 10 questions maximum. So this survey is going to gauge where you are with the SDGs and what you've got planned for them in the next year. So we're going to, and to support this, we're going to ask for evidence you can provide. So this might be a sustainability report that you already do, so green impact. If you already have started to look at SDGs within your work on green impact or something like that, something similar. We know there's a lot of things that are already in use, LIFE, for example, the EAUC is one as well. If you use a reporting of that variety, you can use that as an example of where you've been putting SDG work in. But then also you can use, so like I said, we're not prescriptive, so it can also be URLs to say initiatives that you've done that contribute specifically to one SDG, or it might be a video you've made, it might be images, it could be anything. Honestly, it doesn't have to be prescriptive. So we're going to ask for links to that sort of thing on this very, very short survey, and we're going to ask everyone to fill this survey in. Then, if an institution is further along in their SDG journey, like we know some institutions are, and particularly if they already map them, then we've got sort of a next stage lined up. Again, still early stages with this, but it's very likely to be based on the UN DESA website. And what you're going to be asked to do there, and we're hoping that everybody will eventually progress there, but obviously the time it takes is going to be dependent on individual institutions. So what you're going to be asked to do there is register, where you have to provide some details about what you've already done on SDGs, and then you're going to provide an SDG update. Unable to say that word today, which is really not ideal. So yeah, then you're going to be asked to provide the update as well, and that'll be an annual thing that you can contribute to, and it'll be able to see on the UN DESA website. And those that can provide this level of detail are held up. They're going to be held up as examples of best practice in the submission we make to the UN High-Level Political Forum. Ultimately, as I said, we're going to hope that everybody progresses to this level, but we recognise that not everyone's there yet. So this is sort of the very early initial stages. Like I said, we've got the task and finish group, but if you would like input into this, do please let us know. We're really keen to make sure this works for everybody. So if you want to ask me directly, just pop me an email. My emails are saban@eauc.org.uk. So that's sort of where we are. If you want to, yeah, just let me know what you think. We're really keen to hear from you.
Thanks, Rosie. So this is a challenging area where Joel Cardinal asked a question earlier on: is there an expected standard that is required for those that are going to sign the accord? And it's a delicate area, because what we want to have here is an inclusive, positive process. But if something is too easy to sign, we all know what it's like to, our leaders love getting a little bit of airtime for signing something and then forgetting about it. And clearly we're not interested in greenwash. So we're walking a fine line of trying to start an inclusive, positive process, which captures some of the great stuff that we've heard about, for example, at Bournemouth. But over time evolves into sort of trying to share that learning and raise the bar. So do please give us your thoughts on how we do this. Rosie will and her Task and Finish group, which is an international group, will share amongst us all where they're getting to, and we would love to have more thoughts on that, so we ensure that this gets the right balance. But I think hopefully you're getting the sense in the tone that I'm trying to set here, where it's inclusive, but it's not just greenwash, because we've all had enough of that. But we also are very, very busy. Good. So, Rosie, was there anything else you wanted to chip in on that one?
No, I think that was it for me. But I mean, we've got time for a little bit of a quick Q&A now.
Great. So any questions? Very, very gratefully received. I'm going to ask Neil and JC just to sort of give their sort of final thoughts or comments on where they think this is going, or where it needs to go, or their hopes for the Accord and their own institutions reporting. But if there are any questions, Rosie, just feel free to chip those in at any time.
Yeah, so I've got this one from Joel here. Thank you, Joel. Is there a minimum activity level expected to support an institution's signature of the SDG Accord?
I think the answer is no, but what if when reading the Accord, it is looking for a line in the sand, a commitment that's saying we recognise these goals, we recognise the role of a university or a college in actually spearheading, finding new solutions for old problems. So it's a commitment, a line in the sand. We wouldn't be specifying a standard as such, not at this very early stage anyway.
There's just a bit of a comment here from David. So I've got, there is extreme reluctance at our university to sign the Accord with an unknown future additional reporting burden. I've been asked to show what additional reporting will be required, showing that only simple reporting is required would unlock senior management support. Yeah, that's a really, really valuable question or contribution. Thank you for that. Absolutely. I'm amazed actually the number of vice-chancellors that have signed it without entirely bottoming that one out. And I'll tell you what's really heartening, the increasing number of vice-chancellors co-signing with the president of the Student Union. I think that's a really interesting approach, a really dynamic, powerful approach. But that's a very good point, and we're at pains now to bottom out what reporting looks like. And if you have a view on this, or if you'd like to give us feedback on what we're drafting, please put your hand up and talk to Rosie. JC, final thoughts on from you on the potential power of this activity?
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. So I think we have again a huge opportunity to raise the voice of higher education. We all know the responsibility that we have, the impact that we could have, and I think with this accord and the report that we're going to provide, we're going to be able to say we are here, we are ready to move forward. We have already done many things, and probably we should think of this. It's why we try to do that with the Global Alliance, is to show that it's not something coming from one or two nice happy clappy university, but and not something from the UK or from France, but it's something global with big universities, small universities, but actually we are showing that the movement is already here, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, JC. JC, thank you very much for stepping in to the UN DESA space. Neil, any final thoughts on the potential and the power of the SDGs to your university?
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get the board to sign off tomorrow. And actually, our university, as the Vice-Chancellor, hasn't signed up yet to the Accord. And that's one of the reasons why, at least that's the reason I've been given. So just to let you know that that's where we're hoping to go. But I really like the idea of the joint signature, so I'll be taking that one forward. The other area for me is one area that we've kind of really struggled with. It's on the education side, which has always been this working out of how our students are being taught about sustainability without doing the heavy-handed audit. And I was really been impressed with the work that UE has done in that area. But actually the work of the teaching, I think, gives us a real opportunity to very quickly gauge from academic colleagues where they could map their courses against the goals in a very relatively quick and painless exercise, and I think that's going to be really powerful. For me, that's our next big.
That's really good, Neil. So I'll hand back to Rosie in a second. Picking up on Neil's comment, the theme of the next EAUC conference on the 21st of June at Kiel is actually on SDG 17, which is basically saying, look, to deliver these transdisciplinary agendas, we need to find new ways of linking, connecting, not just across the disciplines, but across all stakeholders in society, to solve these huge social, economic, and environmental challenges. So the theme of the conference is very much looking at the new collaborations which are starting to form between civil society universities across the departments of universities and between universities globally in finding new ways of thinking. So put that date in your diary. Neil, JC, thank you very much. I'll hand back to Rosie just to close the webinar.
Okie dokie. So as Ian said, that's the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much, Joe, Neil and JT for sharing that insight. We hope that it's given you sort of a bit of a better understanding of where this reporting sits on a global stage and how mapping in actuality can work with what you've already got. This webinar will be uploaded onto the EAUC website and the Sustainability Exchange shortly, so please feel free to share the resource with any colleagues or fellow EAUC members. I will also send out a short survey so we can gain your feedback. Please take a few minutes just to complete that, so it's really useful for us. This is the second in a series of webinars on the SDGs. The third we're hoping to run in March. It's looking like it's going to be around engagement. And how to get more people interested in the SDGs within your institution. So if you're interested in that, do keep an eye on our events page on the EAUC website. Just a reminder, if your institution hasn't signed up to the SDG Accord, please encourage them to do so. We're working on resources to support you with this, but in the meantime, you can sign up as an individual if you haven't already as well. Just go to our website, which is sdgaccord.org. To get all the latest information about SDGs, you can sign up to our learning network as well. You can either do this when you sign the Accord, or you can email me directly to ask to be added. I'll circulate an email out shortly, so you've got my email if you'd like to do that. And as always, we're always on the lookout for SDG resources, so if you can supply any, we'd be really appreciative. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you again next time.